Hi, I'm Joe Lindley. I'm with cravingsugar.net, and the topic for this video is low carb barbecue brisket, double cooked in a smoker. I've been looking forward to this because this is one of my favorite dishes. Basically, you take a 10-pound brisket, smoke it, and it turns into a lot of different servings, so it can be stored away in the freezer, and on top of that, it's just absolutely delicious. This is Texas style brisket, and it's really based upon early German settlers, early butchers in the south central Texas area. They had what is traditionally called a brisket cut of meat, which is a low grade meat actually. And they noticed that Mexican ranchers around there were doing something called a barbacoa, where they would slow cook or smoke a cow's head or a goat head, and it turned into just very tender meat. So these German butchers tried that with a brisket, and there was born the Texas brisket, and it's just outstanding. Now, one thing I do is double cook it, and the reason I do that is there's a section of the brisket that's called a fat cap on top. That's a lot of fat and meat mixed together, and frankly, it doesn't have as good a taste if it's cooked normally. So what we'll be doing is cooking that section twice, and I'll show you how to do that in the video. Another thing is that I always cook at 225 degrees all the time, and generally the cooking time is 1 1/4 hour for every pound of meat. So if you've got a 10-pound brisket, that's going to be 12.5 hours. Stick with that, and it does quite well. So I hope you get to try this, and I'll see you later in the video. Thanks. Bye. Okay, well, we're going to put the rub on the brisket now. And first of all, let me show you what I bought for this particular run. This is a choice Packer trim brisket. It goes for about $3 a pound. I've gotten it as little as $1 a pound on sale, like when they have a 4th of July or something like that, so I can stock up on them when I find them then. Generally, you can get them from $1.50. Somehow the prices are higher these days. But this is 9.45 pounds, almost 10 pounds. And this is a choice beef grade. You can get select. In fact, I've had just as good a luck with a select grade, which is less expensive. So go with a select if you find one. Now, this is the brisket right over here. This is the flat side up, the fat side up. And see, it's all fat up here. And let me show you the big piece of fat that's over here. The huge, sometimes you find huge pieces of fat at this end of the brisket. And you can see that there is meat up here, but it's got a lot of fat mingled up with it. And this meat, if you cook it just for 15 hours, it's passable, but it doesn't taste that good. In fact, at restaurants here in Texas, they'll give you, when they slice the brisket, they'll put a piece of this on top of the piece of the flat, which is the part I showed you on the flat side. I'll show you that in a second. And the other piece is much nicer than this is, and so they put the two of them together. But what some restaurants do, which is what I'm copying here, is they take this fat piece, this fat cap is what it's called, and they cook it a second time, and that's what we'll be doing. So this is the fat side, and I'll just show you a peek at the lean side. And you can see the lean side is nice and lean, and this piece of lean really, it's called a flat, and it goes the entire length of the brisket. So we're going to be putting the rub on this, and what I'm using right now is a commercial rub, Gordon's Grub Rub, seasoning with tenderizer. I've made my own rub based on recipes I found on the internet, but this stuff is about the same price. When you look into the cost of all the spices and this stuff, this works out pretty well. And I buy it in big tubs like this. And for the rub itself, I always put it in a separate container first, so that when you're reaching in there with your hands, and your hands are bloody and stuff, you won't contaminate your container of rub. And what we're going to do basically is just coat the entire brisket with the rub, and do it pretty heavily. Just make sure you cover every single surface and rub it in with your hand. And be careful you don't have any cuts, because this stuff has got peppers and stuff in it. It'll burn. And be sure and do the sides as well. And just liberally coat the whole thing with rub. And leave it on. Sometimes I put this on just before I put it in the smoker. Sometimes I've left it on as long as a couple of hours. Keep in mind, the longer you leave this rub in, the more thicker the bark is going to be, which is the outside charred surface. And you also get more drying the more you leave it on. So I would do it just a little while just before you put it on the fire, on the smoker, or maybe an hour or two at the most. And so this is going to go into the smoker next, and talk to you next time. Bye. One more important tip on this is that when you're putting the rub on, keep track of which side you're putting it on. This is the fat side right here, the fat cap side, because when you put it in the smoker, you always want the fat side on top. So the fat part is on the top. And the reason for that, of course, is so that the fat will melt over the meat and keep it moist. And also, I generally put a lot of rub on the top, since that's going to melt down over everything and provide flavor the whole time. So again, fat is on the top when you go in the smoker. Okay, now this is going into the smoker. Thanks. Bye. Welcome back. I've just transferred the brisket into the smoker. Thought I'd walk through that. This is a little electric smoker. I just love this thing. They call it Lazy Q in the world of smoking, because there's a lot of zealots in the smoking industry that think you should only do it with wood or charcoal. But this is electric, which means I can put this in and just forget about it. And I leave it outside. I have a cover for it to keep it out of the rain. You can see I've got a little chimney there to let the smoke come out. And let's look inside. I've already put the brisket in. I don't know if we can see in there. Let's let it smoke clear out a little bit and we'll see it. I just now fired it up maybe 10 minutes ago, so it's just not getting hot. There's a box in the bottom there where the smoke's coming out, and there's some wood chips in there. I use hickory, and they're what makes the smoke. And you can see the brisket in there just barely. I have to put it at a 45-degree angle to fit inside the box. And so for this particular brisket, it's a 10-pound brisket, so we're going to leave it in here in this first stage for 15 hours. And the point with any kind of smoker is shut the door and leave it shut. Don't mess with it. You can look at it every now and then, but try not to open the door much. So I'm going to close it up, and we'll see you on the next part of this.